Tessa Blanchard holds a very special place here on 3 Count Commentaries because the very first subject I ever tackled on this channel was the canceling of Tessa Blanchard. I think the first 2 or 3 videos I did were on the allegations of racism and bullying that were aimed at Tessa Blanchard in 2020. Now here it is, a glorious 5 years later, and Tessa Blanchard is coming back full circle, returning to TNA wrestling, and people are upset. Folks are very mad. So we're going to talk about this, and then we may actually go into some of the responses of people who are upset about this. But first, let me get my thoughts on the matter. Here's how I feel. There was about 8 points that I wrote down as I was, considering what I was going to say here. I listened to JD from New York scream in my ear for 20 minutes. I was at work, so it didn't matter. But he started going on and on and on about no apology. No public apology. There should be an apology. For those of you who don't know, Tessa Blanchard was accused of calling a black Latina wrestler, La Rosa Negra, the N-word in Japan and spitting at her. She was also accused of being a bully by Chelsea Green and Allison Kay and Isla Dawn and a bunch of other women. She was called a bully and a racist and all this stuff. This was the day, this stuff came out, I think the day of her winning the TNA World Championship as a female. And the company went through with it anyway. Several months later, Tessa Blanchard decided that she was going to go to Mexico with her then fiance Daga, and she was being booked to come back to TNA and to drop the championship, and she refused. She said she wasn't coming back for, I guess, it was in the middle of the pandemic at the time, and she just decided she wasn't going to come back. So they stripped her of the title, and she was, I guess, fired from the company, and she hadn't been back since. So it was a really nasty situation. She spent most of her time in Mexico since then, and then she had a short stint about a year or 2 ago in WOW, Women of Wrestling, when Jeannie Buss took over. Tessa Blanchard was booked as the top star of WOW for about a year and some change. And then there was a falling out, quote unquote. Nobody will specify what that falling out was. And she was then booted from WOW. And this wasn't that long ago. So when people are talking about Tessa Blanchard's apology, well, for starters, she denied that she did any of these things, even though there were supposedly witnesses of these things occurring. She denied that they happened. So if she doesn't feel like she did anything wrong, and she said all of these things are false, why would she apologize for them? Now, an apology is an admission of guilt. If she says, hey, I'm sorry about all these things, that means that she's admitting that she said them, but she has never admitted to saying them. The most recent interview she has done talking about these allegations of the racism and the bullying, etc., she was talking about being suicidal after all of this stuff came out, and essentially it tanked her career. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, Tessa is not a good girl. It's not like she didn't do anything wrong and she's just a little Girl Scout. She's got a bit of an attitude, and she is a bit abrasive. Even the people who, well, let's put it into proper context. The woman who is the victim of this situation said that it happened. Other people said that they saw it. Tessa denies that it occurred. Says that she was not a racist. She has no racism in her body. And she was, in 2024, she was talking about ending her own life because of how damaging this was to her career. And she's basically spiraled out of control after this. Even though she was TNA champion for a while, the whole thing just kind of got out of control. And she was, I wouldn't say blackballed, but she was blackballed. After she screwed over TNA, AEW didn't bring her in, and WWE didn't bring her in. She was spending most of her time in Mexico. And then she kind of, because Mexico is different, let's say, she was able to make a living down there. I'm not going to get into her personal life, but She was able to make a living in Mexico, and then she was able to come back, and then the rumors swirled that she was going to return to TNA. But she never admitted that these things occurred. She is still in denial that they happened. And I'm not going to force people to apologize for things that I believe they said, that she says she never said. And in 4 or 5 years, she has continued to say she never said it. And she didn't do these things. Now, is all these other people lying? I don't know. I wasn't there. Now, no doubt she has a history. Because, again, she was given a second chance when it came to WOW. And she's managed to screw that up. And it can't be everybody else. So that means that Tessa does not play very well with others. It is a problem, a Tessa Blanchard problem. Therefore, at the very least, she's a bitch. Maybe she's a racist, maybe she isn't. Otherwise, she's just a bitch. Everything we've seen from Tessa means that she kind of is rough on people who are not as talented as she is. And while it was said that she cut scathing promos on some of the women, and while they're not traditional pro wrestlers, they're mostly like actresses going through spots and stuff like this. So they're not like traditional pro wrestlers. And Tessa, of course, is. But it said that she was pretty rough on talent there. Also, she got into it with management, all that kind of stuff. And of course, if she's getting into it with individual wrestlers, calling them names, bullying them or whatever. If we take all that stuff to be true, then she's just a bitch and she's difficult to work with. Well, to that stuff, I say, if Tessa, I hate to say it this way, but that's the only way to say it. If Tessa Blanchard was male, nobody would care. I mean, we all sit here and we talk about CM Punk and how he supposedly cornered Nick Namath in a locker room, or how he cornered Jack Perry in a locker room, or how he beat up the Young Bucks. Nobody cares. Nobody cares if you can't get along with other people. This is a business. It's not a clubhouse. So if Tessa doesn't get along with some of the other women, so what? They just have to respect each other enough to work together. And hopefully that the situation will blow over and they'll get over it. I mean, and that's just like one of the recent things. There's tons of stories of guys being jerks, even women being jerks over time. I mean, Britt Baker is consistently a problem in AEW. Now, I guess eventually they're going to work that thing out, but Tessa Blanchard being uniquely targeted because she was a bully, it seems ridiculous, Now, the racism stuff, I guess, would be pretty substantial. And that's the issue here. But apparently the two parties involved, being Tessa Blanchard and La Rosa Negra, have patched things up and they've been seen taking pictures together. And this picture of La Rosa Negra and Tessa Blanchard was in 2023. So it was last year. So we don't know for sure that the racism stuff actually occurred. But we do know that the alleged victim of said racism is on good terms with Tessa. So what right do I have to hold any hard feelings when I can, for starters, cannot prove it occurred? And secondly, the girl who said that it did happen is taking pictures with her later on. I mean, it was 3 years later, but it still happened. So that's just one of the many things that we need to be talking about here is what's the response of the alleged victim and what actually occurred. Another thing that I want to put on record is Gail Kim. So a lot of people I guess they kind of blamed Impact Management. Better yet, just call it Anthem's Management, who are re-signing Tessa. But one of Tessa's biggest supporters is actually Gail Kim. Gail Kim is in a very interesting position. She has a lot of political power over in TNA. I think she's just an agent and a producer. I think she's also on the creative team. Gail Kim has always been a booster and protector of Tessa Blanchard. She supported putting the belt on Tessa Blanchard the day that all of this stuff came out, that the bullying accusations, the racism accusations, etc. Gail Kim pushed forward. She was in favor of the company putting the belt on Tessa anyway, despite all of that stuff. And in 2023, she even went on record as saying that Tessa should be doing bigger things in the business. I think she was in Mexico at the time, as she was reminiscing over some of the matches she had with Tessa. And, it was 2022, I'm sorry. So it was 2 years ago. So, while, you want to blame Anthem, you want to attack certain people, I think Gail Kim is one of the people who, if Tessa Blanchard was a bad person, and this is one of the things that Gail Kim defended Tessa on, is that if Tessa was a bad person, Gail Kim would not be supporting her. That was her defense at the time, because people were saying like Gail Kim was a hypocrite while supporting this big racist, while kind of also attacking WWE for being racist, because that's what she does. She's a big woke idiot. But anyway, the idea being is that she says, hey, if I saw any of the stuff that I heard from Tessa, if I saw any of that stuff, I wouldn't be supporting her. And so she's always gone after the, I know Tessa, but that's not the Tessa that I know. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the idea of bringing Tessa Blanchard back is either A, not a Gail Kim idea, or B, if it's somebody else brought it up and she just supports it. So I'm thinking Gail Kim is an important bit here. And for the record, Gail Kim is a female minority. She's, I think, Korean or something like that. So I want people to recognize that too. Is that Gail Kim is a huge SJW. And if she's willing to work with Tessa, and if she's willing to vouch for Tessa numerous times over the years, then I'm not saying one person can wash away all the stuff that other people say. But Gail Kim is a person of influence in TNA. So her opinion holds weight. And if this idea was pitched and it was not a person that Gail Kim thought could work in that locker room, she wouldn't be there. So, again, does it counteract anything that Chelsea Green or Isla Dawn or Allison Kay said? No. It doesn't counteract anything anybody else said. But Gail Kim has more authority in this business than they do. And if she's always been a supporter of Tessa Blanchard, and Tessa Blanchard would not get a check from TNA without Gail Kim being okay with it. And that would cover another one of my points, which is that the company itself has a huge beef with Tessa. Not just because of the racism and the bullying, but her refusing to do business previously. Now, it's a new regime. Scott D'Amore is no longer there. This is going to be very important for my next set of statements. Scott D'Amore is not there anymore. And I guess he would be the guy that Tessa had issues with. I think he was running the company when Tessa was made world champion and when Tessa refused to come back and do business. Well, Scott D'Amore is gone. Now, one of the things that you see on the internet is that Tessa Blanchard being re-signed has caused problems in the locker room. That people like Jordynne Grace don't want to work with Tessa Blanchard. To that, I say this. One, the biggest thing that they did was not signing Tessa Blanchard. It was actually firing Scott D'Amore. Because now all of Scott D'Amore's guys are leaving. And this is an important bit to realize when you see why the company is bringing Tessa back. Speedball Mike Bailey is leaving. Jordynne Grace is leaving. Josh Alexander is leaving. All three of these people are leaving. Before we even start talking about Tessa Blanchard coming in, just the firing of Scott D'Amore has led to people wanting to leave the company. Because These were people that Scott D'Amore recruited and brought into TNA, and they've always been loyal to him. And if you can do your own research on the people who were frustrated with Anthem when Scott D'Amore was fired. So these people are, the locker room was already divided. There's already a bunch of people trying to leave. So when you start talking about, well, Jordynne Grace, she doesn't deserve this. Jordynne Grace is leaving. She's already leaving. So it's like the idea that the company should look after Jordynne Grace. It's like she's not going to be there that much longer anyway. So what difference does it make? It's not like her decision to stay with TNA is hinging on whether Tessa Blanchard is going to be here or not. It's not an either or situation. Jordynne Grace is leaving whether you bring Tessa Blanchard in or not. So it doesn't matter what Jordynne Grace thinks. Now you could say, well, you're asking her to work with Tessa Blanchard, which is, in my opinion, an important bit. She doesn't want to work with Tessa Blanchard according to the internet. She doesn't want to work with Tessa. She didn't want anything to do with Tessa. I could see why you might want to avoid that issue. But at the same time, again, this is not a clubhouse. This is a business. You put your differences aside for the good of the company. You're leaving anyway. What difference does it make to you who you put over on your way out? You're leaving anyway. As I listen to JD from New York scream about how Jordynne Grace doesn't deserve this, it's not like they're going to throw her in a freezer or something like this. They're not saying that Tessa Blanchard is going to, you have to be sacrificed to the gods. She's already losing to a bunch of people on TV because she's leaving. She'd have been pinned by Masha Slamovich and Tasha Steelz and a bunch of other women, which I'm sure she had no problem with, because again, she's leaving anyway. So she might have to hold her nose once or twice to work with Tessa Blanchard on the way out. It's not that big a deal. You're going to go, just lay down and think of Stanford. You're going to get paid anyway. Who cares? Right? Now, anybody else who might have a problem with Tessa being there, call them into the office and settle it. Not saying threaten to fire people, but let people go on record if they don't want to work with Tessa. Let them go on record and say that. Let it be known. Work it out. That's how these things work. Tessa Blanchard is legitimately one of the best female talents in the world. The only reason she's not in WWE right now is because she was called a racist. And that shit stuck. And there was no way for her to get it off of her. That's literally the only reason she's not in WWE or in AEW right now. So TNA has done themselves, I don't want to say a service. They made this talent poach proof. Everybody keeps trying to take talent from them. There's rumors that Mike Bailey is going to run off to AEW. There's rumors of obviously that Jordynne Grace is going to WWE. Nobody wants Tessa, so she's going to be there. She's going to be your franchise player. So that's a huge positive to her being there. She's legitimately talented, and nobody else is going to take her. So for me, it's not the worst idea I've ever heard. Most people, if you were to tell them somebody is extremely talented, but they're a bit of a screw up, they'll probably ask you how bad is the screw ups. And ranging from Brock Lesnar to Randy Orton to CM Punk to who was also some legendary, the Ultimate Warrior. There's some pretty legendary screw ups in wrestling. People who are extraordinarily talented, but maybe their head is not screwed on right. Maybe they become too successful too fast. Again, Tessa Blanchard is 29 years old. She was screwing up her career at 25. Randy Orton was also screwing up his career at 25. There's a lot of people who got chances. And I'm saying, I don't see Tessa as being any different than those guys. Am I saying that she's like the female Randy Orton? I'm not going to go that far. In fact, what we've heard from Randy is worse than with the stuff that we heard from Tessa. We heard about Randy shitting in bags, flashing girls, and being a bully, and hot-tempered and all that. We just heard that Tessa maybe cussed a couple people out, maybe used a racial slur, and then maybe spit on somebody. Like, that's pretty bad. It sucks. Somebody should have knocked her the fuck out if she actually did do that stuff. But in the realm of pro wrestling, it ain't that bad. I mean, wrestlers have done worse to each other than what Tessa Blanchard is being blackballed for. And don't mistake this for me simping for or making excuses for Tessa. If Tessa Blanchard never works another match, I wouldn't care. I'm just looking at things from a practical perspective. Practically, people have done worse. And they've gotten away with it. Either because they were protected politically, or they were so goddamn talented that nobody wanted to get rid of them. Whatever the excuse, people have done worse than Tessa and been fine. In this situation, however, I am deeply concerned because Tessa had not changed that much. Again, all this stuff comes out in 2020. She's given another opportunity when it comes to WOW Women of Wrestling, an all-female promotion, and she gets in trouble again, and she gets kicked out of there pretty quickly. So, all that needs to be taken into account. The fact that she got ran out of WOW because she got into it with management, and she got into it with some of the other talent, that wasn't that long ago. So I'm not even sitting here saying that, oh, Tessa's a girl, she's changed. I'm saying she might have a bad attitude. She might be kind of bitchy and shitty or whatever. But TNA is well within their rights to give her another chance. If that's what they're deciding to do. If that's what they want to do, if they want to give Tessa another chance, they're well within their rights to do so, because they have taken a chance on other shitty wrestlers with bad reputations. They let them come in and come back too. People with bad reputations have left one wrestling company and gone to another as well. It happens. I know everybody wants every wrestler to be a saint, but that's not going to happen. Some people are just shitty people who are really good at their job. And the fact of the matter is, I want people to be good at their job. As long as you're not a pedophile or a rapist, I really don't care. I don't care that much. Because guys like MVP and Booker T have went to prison for a long time for pulling guns on people. And guess what? Everybody managed to get over it. All right? They managed to get over it. Guys have been kicked out of locker rooms for domestic violence and then went to some other company, and it turns out it's all forgiven. It's all over with. It's fine. Thumbs up. And so when you see people like Tessa Blanchard or Matt Riddle get more opportunities, you do say, okay, how many chances do people get? It's a legitimate question. At the same time, though, this is Tessa's and TNA's new opportunity. TNA is trying to get bigger. They're trying to grow the brand. They need a name attached to them. They need a franchise player, somebody who's not going to up and leave. And if WWE fully believes it, and they have certain women on the roster who will not work with Tessa and are definitely against Tessa being there, then guess what? She's not going to go to WWE. If just for the negativity, AEW won't touch her. And then again, these people have 4 or 5 years to try it, and none of them did. She's going to be your franchise player. She's legitimately good. She can carry your division. And you want that to be the best division in wrestling, because that's what TNA has always lauded itself as being the home of women's wrestling, has been overtaken by NXT. But Tessa's never going, if this works out, she's not going to leave. She's not going anywhere else. So let her be the cornerstone of your women's division. And I don't see a problem with that either, as long as everybody's getting along. Now, if she goes back there and she's acting up again, just fire her, shit, and call it a day. And I see a lot of people who don't watch TNA, people who still think that Jordynne Grace is the women's champion. She's not, by the way. I heard that in the JD from New York video. Oh, why does Jordynne Grace have to lose the title to her? Jordynne Grace ain't even the champion anymore. So that should tell you that some people don't even watch the fucking product to begin with, and they're upset about this. Nobody even watches TNA. A bunch of people who don't watch TNA mad at what TNA is doing. My opinion of it is, it's your company. It's a company. It's a business. It's not a clubhouse. Everybody ain't got to be friends. You guys ain't got to have sleepovers. And this was 5 years ago. If she can make up with the woman who allegedly was called the slur, then she can make up with other people too. But I would be on edge because she just got into it with some people at the last place she worked at. And she seems to only really be able to work in Mexico. So we'll see how it all turns out. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later.
No one does it better.